There are truths so poisonous they don't just break you, they remake you. This is one. In October 1971, 17-year-old Sarah Mae Whitaker was dragged into Mercy General Hospital in rural Virginia. Her skin was paper-thin, veins crawling like black rivers under the surface. She was swollen to grotesque proportions, not with life, but with something else. The men who carried her were calm, almost proud. They all claimed to be the father, her father, uncle, grandfather, even her brother. It wasn't a confession. It was an announcement. The Whitakers had a tradition: never pollute the bloodline. For over a century they bred only with each other, looping back generation after generation until their family tree was more noose than branch. Outsiders called them cursed. They called themselves pure. Locals whispered of Whitaker children who never spoke, whose eyes seemed empty, who walked like their bones had been put together wrong. Doctors stopped answering their calls. Ministers avoided their hills. But inside the clan, this was perfection. Every deformity was a step towards something they believed would set them apart from, and above, the rest of humanity. When Sarah Mae was placed on the table, her belly twitched in pulses, not kicks. Her skin stretched to translucence, veins writhing like living things. The doctors didn't see a pregnancy. They saw an abomination in progress. 3 walked out. 1 never returned to medicine. What emerged that day was no accident of nature. It was the culmination of a program, a breeding plan, a formula followed for generations, in secrecy, under the shadow of Appalachian mountains. The government locked the truth away for 50 years. Tonight, I'm opening the door they swore must stay shut. To understand the horror, you have to start in 1847. Joshua Whitaker claimed 200 acres of Virginia mountain land so remote no one else wanted it. The winters were brutal. The soil was dead. The nearest town was 3 days by horseback. But Joshua wasn't seeking prosperity. He was seeking isolation. He brought with him 2 wives, Martha and her younger sister Rebecca. The preacher blessed both unions, desperate for any congregation. By 1855, Joshua had fathered 14 children between the two, and when those children came of age, they didn't marry outsiders. They married each other. Joshua preached that mixing bloodlines diluted the divine essence God had placed in his family. He taught his children they were chosen, special, destined. And so the loop began. Sibling to sibling, cousin to cousin, uncle to niece. By the 1880s, the Whitaker family tree was a twisted vine curling back on itself. Births brought children with strange eyes, odd movements, or no speech at all. Local doctors whispered of a curse. The Whitakers saw a blessing. By 1920, they had developed what they called the rotation system. Every fertile woman would bear children to multiple male relatives in a fixed order. They tracked it all in ledgers, breeding humans as farmers breed livestock. The result was beyond natural law. Sarah Mae's grandmother, Charity Whitaker, was simultaneously daughter, niece, and cousin to the same man. Her DNA showed patterns scientists called impossible. And yet, inside their hills, the Whitakers believed they were approaching the perfect circle. A level of genetic purity the outside world would never understand. Sarah Mae's birth, decades later, was the next step toward that perfection. A step the world was never supposed to witness. By the time Sarah Mae was born in the 1960s, the Whitakers had been cut off from the world for over a century. They had their own dialect, their own rules, their own version of reality. Every outsider was an enemy. Every pregnancy was a sacred experiment. Sarah Mae grew up watching babies born with bodies twisted like roots, with faces that seemed rearranged, with eyes that glowed faintly in dim light. Most didn't survive. Those deaths were called offerings to the blood. She learned never to question the elders. The pure line was worth every sacrifice. At 14, she bore her first child. It lived for hours. At 16, another. Hours again. Then came the third pregnancy. Different. Dangerous. By her 7th month, her belly was monstrous, veined in black, pulsing in waves. It wasn't kicking. It was thrumming. Her skin stretched to translucence. Her eyes shifted from brown to pale yellow that seemed to glow. Her hair fell out. Her teeth loosened. She wasted away, even as her stomach grew. The family believed the Messiah of their bloodline was coming. They prepared rituals, carved symbols into wood, sang in low tones at night. To them, her suffering was a divine transformation. But Sarah May was dying. By the 9th month, she was unconscious. The family carried her 30 miles to a hospital, not for help, but for witnesses. They wanted the birth recorded, documented, remembered. They had no idea the act would open a door to forces far beyond their hills. What emerged from Sarah May's womb would horrify medicine, haunt government files, and leave a scar on American history you've never been told about. Until now, the delivery room reeked of antiseptic and something sweeter, rotting. Sarah May's body shuddered under the fluorescent lights. The fetal monitor beeped in a strange, syncopated rhythm. Not a heartbeat, but something like a coded pulse. At 3:14 a.m., the doctors began. Sarah May's abdomen convulsed in waves. When the amniotic sac ruptured, the fluid was not clear. It was black and thick as ink. Nurses gagged. One ran from the room. What slid from her was wrong. The head was too large, the eyes already open, pale gold, reflective like a cat's. The skin, translucent, shimmered with a faint glow under the lights. Its fingers were long, jointed oddly, ending in soft, translucent tips that curled and uncurled as if testing the air. It made no cry, only a low, vibrating hum that shook instruments on the metal trays. Dr. Allen, the senior physician, froze. He would later say that when the infant looked at him, he felt it thinking, not instinct, thought. Sarah May never regained consciousness. She died minutes later. The family did not mourn. They gathered around the newborn, touching it, murmuring in their strange tongue. The hospital tried to take custody, citing medical concern, but the Whitakers refused, citing religious rites. Before sunrise, they left, baby swaddled, Sarah May's body in the back of their truck. The hospital filed reports. State authorities filed requests. Then, silence. 2 days later, Dr. Allen found a typed letter on his porch. No return address, just 5 words. You didn't see a child. He resigned within the month. The thing born that night was named Malachai Whitaker. Within a year, it would force the government to send men into the Appalachian hills. Men who would not come back. Malachai Whitaker was not like the others. By 6 months, he could stand. By 8, he was walking, but not toddling. His movements were fluid, deliberate, eerily silent. His golden eyes tracked every motion around him, unblinking for minutes at a time. He didn't cry. Ever. He hummed, low, constant, vibrating in the chest. The sound made animals freeze, dogs whimper, and one old man swear his pacemaker skipped. The Whitaker elders treated him like a prophet. He was fed separately, never allowed outside during daylight, and kept in the basement of the family's largest cabin. Rumors spread in town of strange lights in the mountains at night, shimmering columns that vanished when approached. By age 2, Malachai could speak in full sentences, but only in the Whitaker dialect, a language so warped from English it was nearly unrecognizable. Outsiders heard it as gibberish. One winter night, a storm knocked out power across the valley. A deputy responding to a downed tree near Whitaker land swore he saw a pale child standing barefoot in the snow, staring at him. When he turned his spotlight on the figure, it was gone. Only 2 small footprints remained, steaming against the ice. The deputy reported it. A week later, he disappeared. His patrol car was found at the base of an old mining road. The keys were in the ignition. The door hung open. The Whitakers said nothing. By the spring of 1973, whispers reached Richmond. State officials planned an inspection of Whitaker property, citing neglected children. They sent 5 men up the mountain. They never came back. The state's missing men were the first sign that the Whitaker problem could not be handled locally. Federal attention arrived quietly, under the guise of geological survey teams. But these surveyors carried weapons, spoke in code, and moved in coordinated patterns. The Whitakers knew before they arrived. Government records later revealed intercepted radio chatter, garbled but clear enough to show panic. One operative screamed, "They're in the trees!" before the line cut. The official story: the team vanished due to natural hazards. The truth: the survivors' bodies, what was left of them, were found months later, suspended high in the pines, stripped clean, bones polished smooth. No claw marks, no signs of tools. Locals swore Malachai had grown, his limbs lengthening unnaturally, his eyes brighter. The hum he produced was now audible from hundreds of feet away on still nights. The sound made people dizzy, disoriented, even lost in their own backyards. The Whitakers began building, not cabins, but tall, narrow structures of wood and bone deep in the forest. Some claimed they were altars. Others said they were conductors, built to channel something the family had been preparing for generations. By late 1974, the government planned Operation Fallroot, a full incursion with 30 men, helicopters, and gas. It launched at dawn. The helicopters came back. The men didn't. One pilot later testified, "We saw them below, standing in perfect formation, all looking up at us. And that humming, God, it was shaking the rotors. Then, nothing." That testimony was sealed. The Whitakers were declared self-sufficient and not a threat. The file was closed. But the people in those hills knew the truth. Malachai Whitaker had only just begun. By 1976, Malachai Whitaker was 13, though his height, build, and unsettling stillness made him seem much older. He no longer hid in the Whitaker basement. Instead, he walked the forests at night, barefoot, leaving no prints. Hunters spoke of seeing his golden eyes in the tree line, always at the same height, no matter the terrain. One man swore Malachai followed him for over an hour without a sound, only to vanish when he crossed into town limits. The Whitakers' land became a no-go zone, not by law, but by fear. That summer, a hiker from Ohio went missing. His body was found weeks later at the base of a Whitaker-built tower, mouth open in a silent scream, eardrums ruptured. His watch had stopped at 3:14 a.m. Malachai's hum had changed. It was no longer constant, but came in sudden bursts, long enough to make animals drop where they stood, their hearts stopped mid-beat. The Whitakers began holding gatherings at these towers. No outsiders were invited, but people from neighboring counties claimed they could see pale lights spiraling up into the sky during these nights. An anthropology professor at the University of Virginia, Dr. Helen Marsh, tried to study the Whitakers. She visited once, taking careful notes and photographs of their structures. 2 weeks later, her house burned to the ground. Her research was gone. She was never seen again. By winter, the valley's residents noticed something strange. No birds in the sky over Whitaker land. No deer tracks. No sound except, sometimes, that low, vibrating hum. And in the spring thaw, when the river ran high, a child's shoe washed up on the banks. Size far too small to fit Malachai. In 1978, the Whitakers' activity escalated. Locals reported seeing convoys of old trucks driving into the hills at night, carrying crates covered in tarps. Some swore they heard muffled cries from within. The Whitaker's towers multiplied, their shapes growing more intricate, twisting like spirals, adorned with bones from animals not native to the region. Hunters claimed to see feathers the size of their arms embedded in the structures, though no one could say what kind of bird they came from. One moonless night, a group of teenagers dared each other to climb the fence into Whitaker territory. Only one returned, barefoot, clothes shredded, eyes wide and unblinking. He never spoke again. By fall, the hum began reaching into town. Windows rattled. Infants cried for hours. Milk soured in fridges. Old folks swore their dead relatives' voices whispered from the static on their radios. A preacher named Samuel Dyer declared the Whitakers agents of revelation and organized a posse to burn their towers. They entered the forest with torches. At dawn, their horses returned riderless. The Whitakers emerged from the woods 3 days later, carrying bundles wrapped in black cloth. They buried them in the field behind their main house. No graves were marked. On October 31st, a black envelope appeared on the desk of the county sheriff. Inside was a Polaroid, a blurry image of the posse standing in a circle, heads tilted back unnaturally, eyes glowing gold in the flash. There was no note. That year, every family within 10 miles of Whitaker land either left or boarded their windows shut. The 1980s brought a strange shift. The Whitakers stopped venturing into town entirely. Their trucks rusted in place. Their land, according to satellite images, seemed to swell with vegetation far denser than the surrounding forest, a green so dark it looked almost black from above. A rare government aerial survey in 1983 captured something no one could explain. A pattern carved into the treetops, visible only from the air. A perfect spiral stretching half a mile across. Malachai was now an adult, but his appearance defied time. Witnesses who saw him swore he looked no older than 20, his skin still unnaturally pale, eyes brighter than before. The hum became a pulse. Short, deep bursts, spaced evenly, like a heartbeat that the land itself was keeping. One summer, fishermen on the river claimed they saw human shapes moving beneath the water, eyes open, faces serene, drifting with the current but never surfacing. In 1986, a logging company won a contract to clear part of Whitaker-adjacent land. On the first day, the crew leader reported strange vibrations through the ground. By day 3, every chainsaw failed, all fuel inexplicably contaminated with black sludge. They pulled out. In 1989, a journalist named Peter Harlan wrote an exposé titled The Whitaker Silence. It included photographs of their towers and testimonies from missing persons' families. 2 weeks after publication, his apartment was found empty. Food was on the table. The TV was still on. His shoes were by the door. Only one thing was missing: him. And in the woods, a new tower rose, taller than all the others. By the early 1990s, the Whitaker land had become a myth, whispered among teenagers and feared by anyone old enough to remember the disappearances. But something was different now. The hum, that low, earth-deep vibration, began to sync with electrical surges in nearby towns. Streetlights flickered in rhythm. Radios emitted bursts of static at precise intervals. And then came the echo nights. At exactly 3:14 a.m., the sound would erupt. Not a hum but a sharp, bone-shaking pulse. Dogs howled in unison. Windows bowed inward as if pulled by invisible hands. People claimed that for a split second, the sky went darker than black. Farmers living just beyond the valley spoke of seeing figures standing in their fields, too tall to be human, their limbs jointed wrong, their heads cocked at perfect angles. In 1994, a research team from Washington, D.C., attempted to enter Whitaker land, equipped with ground-penetrating radar and seismic sensors. Only 2 made it back. One was catatonic. The other spoke only once, muttering, "The towers aren't built. They grow. That winter, a freak storm blanketed the valley in snow so heavy it collapsed barns and toppled power lines. Yet photographs taken from a distance showed the Whitaker towers untouched, their spiraling structures shedding snow as if repelling it. And in the center of the largest spiral, a new shadow appeared. Something massive, round and half-buried, pulsing faintly in the night. The Whitakers had not been seen for months, but in January 1995, a single figure was spotted walking the ridgeline at dawn. Malachai. Only now, his eyes were gone, smooth skin where they once were, and yet he moved without hesitation, as if he could still see. The spring thaw of 1996 brought more than melted snow. Locals noticed the river had turned dark, not from mud, but from something thicker, almost oily. Fish floated belly up, their bodies intact, but their eyes missing. The county declared the area unsafe, fencing off key entry points, though it was more for show than for safety. Everyone knew the Whitaker land ignored boundaries. That same year, a group of urban explorers broke into the restricted zone. They documented their trip on camcorders, laughing nervously as they filmed the towers. Only one tape was recovered. In the footage, the group approaches a structure shaped like a twisting helix of wood and bone. The hum begins faintly, building until the audio distorts. One by one, the explorers vanish from frame. Not pulled or attacked, simply gone between one blink and the next. The camera falls. For 2 minutes, the lens captures only the spiraling tower, which appears to breathe. The final frame shows Malachai standing inches from the camera. His mouth opens wider than humanly possible, his eyeless face still somehow fixed on the viewer. The tape ends there. By late summer, the hum had spread beyond the valley. People as far as 30 miles away reported vivid nightmares, dreams of standing in endless black water under a sky without stars. And always, far in the distance, a single tower rising higher and higher. Some who had the dream woke with dirt under their fingernails. In October, a hunter went missing in the hills. When search parties found his body, it was upright, knees locked, arms outstretched, skin pale as chalk. He was pointing toward Whitaker land. By 1998, even the government stopped pretending control. The restricted area signs rotted in place, unguarded, as if some unseen agreement had been made. Leave it alone, and it might leave you alone. But it didn't. That winter, an elderly woman named Ruth Pennington walked 14 miles barefoot from her farmhouse to the sheriff's office. She spoke in gasps, her skin frostbitten, clutching a bundle wrapped in an old quilt. Inside was an infant. Its limbs were disproportionately long, its eyes jet black and unblinking. It never cried, only made a low clicking sound from deep in its throat. When asked where she found it, Ruth whispered, "It followed me home." The baby was sent to a medical facility in Richmond. 2 weeks later, the building suffered a total blackout. Staff claimed to hear the hum emanating from the newborn's room. When power was restored, the crib was empty. Cameras showed nothing. That same year, satellite imagery picked up something new. The towers were leaning inward, forming a perfect circle visible only from above. In the center, that massive buried sphere had begun to rise, exposing more of its surface. It was covered in intricate carvings that matched no known language, though one researcher noted a disturbing similarity to fetal skeletal structures. Locals reported that Malachai was now rarely seen, but when he was never alone. Beside him walked pale figures of varying height, their movements synchronized, their heads tilted, as if listening to something far away. People began leaving the county in record numbers. Those who stayed claimed they could feel the hum in their teeth, a steady pulsing countdown. They didn't know what it was counting down to. The year 2000 marked the first mass sighting. On a fog-drenched night in March, residents across 5 counties saw the same thing. a glowing column of light erupting from the Whitaker Valley. It wasn't fire. It wasn't electricity. Witnesses described it as liquid light, flowing upward into the clouds, carrying with it an endless stream of shapes. The shapes were human-sized, but not human. Silhouettes with too many joints, limbs bending wrong, heads tilted too far back, mouths open wider than bone should allow. They rose silently, disappearing into the fog. In the days after, livestock was found mutilated across a 50-mile radius, bodies intact, but spines removed entirely. Government officials returned in force, this time with helicopters, floodlights, and armed escorts. The operation lasted exactly 3 nights. On the 4th morning, the valley was empty. The soldiers were gone. Helicopters sat abandoned on the ridgeline, rotors slowly turning in the wind. Their radios still hissed, playing nothing but the hum. An anonymous leak later claimed that deep scanning sonar had been deployed during the operation. The readings suggested that the buried sphere beneath the towers was hollow and full of movement. After that, official involvement ceased entirely. No one from Washington spoke of the Whitakers again, but the hum grew louder. By 2007, the towers had surpassed 300 feet, visible even from the interstate. They twisted skyward like skeletal fingers, reaching for something unseen. Truckers reported losing time when passing near the valley. Minutes, sometimes hours, gone without explanation. Some swore they saw figures riding in their passenger seats, pale and grinning, vanishing when the driver dared to blink. That summer, a film crew from New York attempted to document the phenomenon for a streaming platform. Only one clip survived their trip. It showed the crew standing at the base of a tower, pointing upward. The camera tilts to follow, and keeps tilting, as if the structure has no end. Then, a voice, not from the crew, but from behind the camera. "It's almost ready." The image distorts. For exactly 17 seconds, a face fills the frame. It's Malachai. But his features shift constantly, melting from one Whitaker face to another, male to female, old to young. When the distortion ends, the crew is gone. The camera remains on the ground, filming the tower's spiral until the battery dies. Later that year, residents in a neighboring county began finding perfectly clean human bones arranged in spirals on their porches. The sheriff burned them. The next morning they reappeared. 2013 became everywhere. It could be heard in underground parking garages, inside church basements, beneath subway tunnels. Even people hundreds of miles away claimed to feel it deep in their bones. Dental fillings cracked. Glass shattered without cause. Pregnant women reported feeling their unborn children twist violently at night. One woman in Roanoke claimed her baby spoke to her in the womb. It said, "Open the circle." The Whitaker land was now off every official map. Satellite images blurred the valley entirely, as though erased. But those who drove the back roads swore they saw the towers. Now leaning so far inward, they seemed moments from touching. In June, a storm unlike any recorded swept across the region. Lightning struck constantly, but never touched the towers. Instead, each bolt curved unnaturally, drawn toward the massive sphere at their center. And then, the hum stopped. For 3 days, silence reigned. People wept in relief. Birds returned. Animals wandered freely into the valley. On the 4th night, the hum returned. Not low and steady, but fast and irregular, like a heartbeat. Those who heard it said they felt an overwhelming urge to go to it. Some did. They were never seen again. It's 2025 now. The towers are gone. Not collapsed, not destroyed, simply gone, as if they'd never existed. The valley is empty except for a perfect, glassy circle of black earth where the sphere once lay. No grass grows there. No insects cross it. Birds avoid it entirely. But sometimes at night, A figure is seen standing at the center, eyeless, smiling. Malachai. He doesn't move. He doesn't speak. But those who see him claim they wake days later, barefoot, with dirt under their nails and a faint ringing in their ears. The hum is no longer in the earth. It's in us. I tell you this not as a warning. It's too late for that. But as a reminder, history is not a straight line. It spirals. The Whitakers understood this. They built their circle, raised their towers, called down whatever waited beyond the black sky. And now, the circle is open. Maybe you think you're safe because you're far away. Maybe you believe this is just a story. But tonight, when you close your eyes, you'll hear it. Low at first, then louder, the hum, and you'll find yourself walking barefoot toward it, unable to stop. Because once you've heard it, you're part of it. Forever.